You know exactly what you need to do. You have enough time to do it. You even know you'll feel better once it's finished. And yet, somehow, you reach for your phone instead. You tell yourself you'll start in 5 minutes. 5 minutes becomes 20. 20 becomes an hour. And the strangest part is that you're not unaware of what's happening. You're watching yourself avoid the thing you said you wanted to do. Maybe it's an email, a project, exercise, studying, cleaning your apartment. Something that would take far less time than the amount of time you've already spent avoiding it. So why can't you just do it? Why can a person genuinely want something, understand exactly what needs to happen, and still find themselves doing almost anything else? For years, we were given a simple answer. You're lazy. You need more discipline. You need better time management. You need to stop making excuses and just get started. But that explanation falls apart the moment you look closely at your own behavior. Because if procrastination were simply laziness, why do ambitious people procrastinate? Why do disciplined people procrastinate? Why can you spend 3 hours completely absorbed in something you care about, then suddenly feel almost physically incapable of answering one simple email? Maybe the problem isn't that you don't know what to do. Maybe the problem is that doing it creates a feeling you don't want to experience. Think about the moment immediately before you procrastinate. Not 10 minutes later. Not after you've already spent an hour scrolling. The exact moment when you decide, I'll do it later. What does that moment feel like? Maybe it's boredom. Maybe uncertainty. Maybe pressure. Maybe the fear that you won't do the task well. Maybe the task feels so large that you don't know where to begin. Or maybe it carries a quieter feeling. I don't want to be told what to do. Whatever the feeling is, something happens next. You escape it. You check your phone. You open another tab. You make coffee. You suddenly decide the room needs cleaning. And for a few seconds, something changes. The pressure disappears. That tiny moment of relief is one of the most important parts of the entire story. Because procrastination is often less about choosing pleasure over responsibility and more about choosing immediate relief over immediate discomfort. The task creates an unpleasant emotional state. Avoiding the task reduces that feeling. Your brain doesn't need to believe the decision is good for your future. It only has to register one thing. I feel better now. And that can be enough to reinforce the behavior. The task is still there. The deadline hasn't moved. Your future hasn't improved. But your emotional state changed. And sometimes that is enough. This creates a brutal little loop. The task creates discomfort. You avoid it. Avoidance creates relief. Then the unfinished task creates guilt and anxiety. That anxiety makes distraction more attractive, so you avoid it again. The very behavior you use to escape the discomfort becomes one of the reasons the discomfort grows. And this explains something that productivity advice often misses. You don't always need more motivation. Sometimes you need to understand what you're trying to escape. Imagine two people looking at the exact same assignment. Both know it will take an hour. Both know it matters. One thinks, fine, let's get this over with. The other thinks, what if I can't do it properly? Same assignment, same deadline, completely different psychological experience. And this is where procrastination can become connected to identity. If the task is simply a task, failure is inconvenient. But if the task has become a test of your intelligence, competence, or worth, starting becomes much more threatening. Writing the first page isn't just writing anymore. It is confronting the possibility that the page might be bad. Applying for the job isn't simply submitting an application. It creates the possibility of rejection. Starting the business isn't merely taking action. It means discovering whether your idea survives reality. As long as you don't start, something remains protected. Potential. You can still tell yourself, I could have done it. And that possibility is strangely comfortable. Because once you act, reality gets a vote. This is one of the hidden reasons procrastination can become so painful. Sometimes you're not avoiding the work. You're avoiding what the work might reveal about you. But there's another possibility, and it's one we rarely talk about. Sometimes you don't procrastinate because the task is difficult. You procrastinate because you feel controlled by it. Think about how many responsibilities you learned as a child through commands. Clean your room, finish your homework, go to bed, do what you're told. As adults, nobody may be standing over us anymore, But certain responsibilities can still carry the emotional feeling of an external demand. Your job tells you what needs to be done. Your calendar tells you where you need to be. Your inbox tells you who expects something from you. And sometimes, quietly, a part of you pushes back, not necessarily with conscious anger, not necessarily with rebellion. Sometimes it's simply, you can't make me do this right now. So you don't. You scroll. You delay. You leave the dishes in the sink. And for a moment, the decision feels like yours again. This doesn't explain all procrastination, and it shouldn't be turned into a diagnosis, but it reveals something important. We don't respond only to what a task is. We respond what the task means. That's why the same 5-minute task can feel effortless one day and impossible the next. The task didn't change. Your relationship with the task changed. And then we make another mistake. We call every form of inactivity laziness. But rest and avoidance are not necessarily the same experience. Sometimes you genuinely need to stop. Your brain and body are not designed to operate at maximum output every waking moment. Rest can be necessary. But notice what happens when you're procrastinating. You're watching a show, but you're thinking about the work. You're scrolling, but you're remembering the deadline. You're lying in bed, but part of your mind is calculating how much time you've already wasted. You aren't really free from the task. You're carrying it with you. That's why procrastination can feel exhausting even when you've technically done nothing. You didn't spend the energy doing the task. You spent the energy trying not to think about it. And now we reach the deepest part of the problem. Time. Every time you say, I'll do it tomorrow, you make a tiny psychological trade. You get relief now, and you give the problem to future you. Tomorrow you will start. Tomorrow you will exercise. Tomorrow you will finally write. Tomorrow you will send the application. Tomorrow you will become more disciplined. The future is incredibly convenient because it can absorb almost anything. There's always another Monday, another morning, another month, another chance. But there's a catch. Tomorrow you is still you. The unfinished work didn't disappear. You didn't solve the problem. You simply moved the emotional cost forward in time. And this may be why procrastination becomes especially dangerous when it concerns the things you genuinely care about. Because the longer you postpone something meaningful, the easier it becomes to confuse potential with progress. You imagine yourself becoming the person who writes the book, the person who gets fit, the person who starts the company, the person who finally changes their life. And imagination gives you something reality cannot. Certainty without consequences. In your imagination, the future version of you is already successful, but action introduces uncertainty. Maybe you fail. Maybe you're not as good as you hoped. Maybe it takes years. Maybe nobody notices. And that is why starting can feel psychologically heavier than dreaming. Dreaming protects possibility. Action tests it. So, what do you actually do with this? Not be more disciplined. Not wake up at 5 a.m. Not delete every app on your phone. The first step is much smaller. Catch the moment before avoidance. The next time you find yourself reaching for your phone instead of doing something important, don't immediately attack yourself. Pause and ask, what am I trying not to feel right now? Is it boredom, fear, confusion, pressure, perfectionism, resentment, uncertainty? You don't have to solve the feeling immediately. You simply have to notice it. Because the goal isn't become someone who never feels resistance. The goal is to become someone who can feel resistance without automatically obeying it. Then make the first action almost embarrassingly small. Don't tell yourself to finish the project. Open the document. Don't tell yourself to exercise for an hour. Put on your shoes. Don't tell yourself to clean the entire apartment. Wash one plate. The point isn't that one plate changes your life. The point is that you're interrupting the old sequence. Discomfort avoidance relief. You're creating a different one. Discomfort action evidence that discomfort is survivable, and that evidence matters. Because every time you act while uncomfortable, you teach yourself something your motivational speeches never could. I don't have to feel ready to begin. And maybe that's the real reason you can't just do it. You were never simply fighting the task. You were fighting the feeling that appeared when you stood in front of it. The fear of failing, the boredom, the pressure, the uncertainty, the loss of freedom. the possibility that reality might not match the person you imagine yourself to be. And once you understand that, procrastination stops being a simple story about laziness. It becomes a window into the relationship you have with discomfort, identity, control, and time. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I'll do it later," don't immediately believe the story. Stop for a moment, look at the thing you're avoiding, and ask yourself one question: what am I actually trying to escape right now? Because sometimes the task isn't the thing you're afraid of. Sometimes you're afraid of how you'll feel when you finally face it.